Alright, we've now cut all through the perimeter, going really close to each of the stitches, and we've left this little thing open right here. So here is where we're going to be turning it around through. Let's do that right now. To do that, it's always good to have something sharp or pointy, or something like this marker pen will also do, and that way you're basically going to be able to get the corners out by poking them. So it tends to be easiest if you just push through this little corner here first and pull out the corner, like so. Then you just gently pull everything else that's inside, like so. Be very gentle, otherwise you may rip your stitches, especially if you've hand sewed it, which is also a possibility, by the way. Alright, it's not looking like much right now, so let's use the pen to get back in there. And here you go. Now we're gonna go and top stitch everything. Here's our hole. Push the flaps inside, as I showed you just now, and pin that into place first, so that it doesn't open. Now go ahead and pin all of the rest of the pad as well. While you're pinning, make sure that the edges really are the way that you want them to be when you sew them. So make sure that the edges are, instead of like this, make sure that the edges are stuck in the right position, like that. It's especially important that you pin things correctly into place over here, in this little corner edge. Here it likes to get really messy when you don't. It can end up really weird if you don't. Sadly, it seems like the edge where you have the hole can never be exactly perfect. At least for me it can't. So play around with it here. Try to get the laps to move a bit or so, and try to pin it again, and see if you can get it any better than that. Alright, and we're all done pinning. So now it's time to sew. Let's do that. For this, I like to start sewing in a place where the hole is not, so that we don't have to fix the hole right at the very beginning that we start sewing in. So as close to the edge as possible. It's a bit tricky to sew right on the edge, especially when your fabric is a little bit light, so it seems like it's not going to be possible this time. This is the corner with the hole. So here, you want to pay close attention to that you're actually closing the hole properly. Okay, and here's our finished result. No, it's not. The fabric and the pad itself are basically in their finished state now, but what's missing is the button. So now, let's add some buttons. We've now got a button, and we've got our sewing kit. I'm going to be threading my needle with sewing machine thread, and I'm going to be using an arm's length, so that means from your hand all the way to your elbow. Usually the first thing I like to do is basically find out where I actually want my button to be. So the way I check out where I want the button to be is basically by closing these things together here first, like that. Making the tips of the flap edges meet like that. Then I'll basically be taking a needle. Any kind of needle is fine. This one's a bit bigger. And I'll make a hole into it. It's basically just... There we go. A hole there. And a hole there. And this now tells me exactly where my button is actually supposed to go. I've decided to have my button here, as there's a little ugly part right there, and I'm gonna hide that. So I'm gonna attach the button to my right side right now. Right here. So to start our sewing, we're gonna take the end, and we're gonna roll it around our fingers maybe twice. Then we're gonna kind of shimmy them off and pull. And we'll be left with a little hole. And we'll be left with a little knot right here. Now we're gonna cut the end of this knot off. And then you have yourselves a knot. So here's my knot. I'm gonna be going in from the other side now. And I'm gonna go right into the hole, like so. Then I'll go back in, and it doesn't really matter exactly how you go in, as long as you go in through the same hole. Now you're gonna try to go over the knot a couple times, and this will keep the knot in place. Alright, make a few knots and you're ready to sew. Okay. So sometimes when you're sewing and you're trying to make a knot, you will actually be making a little loop because the knot didn't go through, as in it doesn't continue when you pull on the string. So in this case, it's simple to just kind of take your needle and then just go over the loop a couple of times, maybe 2 times, and then just cut the loop off and it will not matter. As long as you've made more knots, ones that obviously don't get stuck if possible. So here I'm gonna make another knot. This time I'm gonna wait until the loop is really small so that nothing can actually get stuck. There we go. And then just pull it tight. I'm gonna cut this loop off now. Alright, and there we go. This is now safely secured in place, and now we can start to actually sew on the button itself. So to do that, we go right into that hole again. Here we go. We're now in the hole. Go through. And now, it's time to look for the button. Here it is. So what you want to do, just push it through any of the button holes, even if the button has just 2 holes. Now, make sure that the button middle sits on the actual hole. Alright, so we're just kind of gonna cross over and up and down. So that means I'm going in from this one right here and out here, for example. Then I'll go in that one and I'll come out of this one. And then just repeat that all the time until the button is completely tight. Let's do that. Also, it can be kind of hard to get into a certain hole because, you know, remember that there's actually a huge knot below that, so if you notice that your button is coming off of the middle, just poke it back into place. Continue that. And I'll see you on the other side.
Two hours later.
Keep going. Keep going until you notice or you know that this button really isn't going to move anywhere in the near future, or in the long future even. You want it to be really tight so that it will definitely be tight even after washing this pad multiple times. It's very easy to poke yourself when you're doing buttons, so beware. Okay, I'm gonna go a couple more times. This button is sitting pretty tightly. Alright, so here we are. I've now sewn this button enough times for it to be really tight. Now, what we're gonna do, so we're gonna come to the other side again, and now we're just gonna go over the stitches that we made. We're gonna pick some of those stitches up, and now comes the part again where we try to make a knot. So pull the loop tight or small, and then go through it and pull tight. Do this 3 times. So every time, to make sure that you don't get knots, pull the loop small first and then go through it. Like so. One more time. Nice. Pull it tight and cut it off, and we're done. So here's our button all attached. Now it's time to do the hole. Okay, so let's do the buttonhole. To do the buttonhole, we first of all want to see again exactly where this button falls, and also how big the button is. So it's easier to take this together, take the 2 flaps, and then kind of see where the button falls. So for me, it falls right here. I'm not sure if you can see it, but we're basically gonna make a line that is as long as the button is wide. So take your pen. Once again, this is a pen which is erasable with water, so this is not going to stain your fabric. Make sure you use a pen which doesn't stain fabric. And now we're gonna go and just draw a line right here. And that is where the button falls for me. Make sure you always draw the line a bit smaller than your actual button. But when we cut this, we're gonna measure the size out to fit perfectly. So keep watching. So here is our line that we've made. Now we're gonna fold this like that. Make sure the point is even, so don't make it go like this, for example. Make sure the point is even onto the fabric. And take your scissors, and now cut a really tiny snip. There we go. I've cut something tiny. So now, every time we make a snip, we're gonna try to fit the button into here. This is too small. I don't even need to try to fit the button into there. So let's go again. We're gonna fold it in half, and we'll cut it again in the same place. There we go. Now that hole is looking a lot bigger. So let's see if our button fits through here. And yeah, cool, the button fits through there. And yeah, the hole has to be really small because it gets bigger as you actually sew the buttonhole. So let's take the button back out of here. And here is our hole. This is what we're going to be sewing around. I've already prepared a needle with a knot on the end. And here's how we do it. So now you're going to go in between the back fabric and the front fabric. And you're gonna go to around about this area here. Pull it through. And make sure that the knot disappears in between the back fabric and the front fabric. Now go through exactly this hole again, but this time include the back fabric. There you go. So we've made a loop by going into the same hole again, this time also going through the back fabric. Pull the loop small, and then here, once you've gotten to this part, you want to make sure to go through the loop from below. So let's pull the loop a tiny bit smaller. You see, now go in through this loop from below and then pull it up. And then there will be a knot at the top of the buttonhole, you see? There we go. And that's what we want. We want all of these little fraying parts here to be knotted off with that knot that we've just created all around the buttonhole. So now, go next to this hole again, push it through, going downward, and then with this loop that you have created, you want to go in from below, like so. And then close it up to form a knot. Continue this all around the buttonhole. Make sure that there's not any spaces in between. If you do see a space, just go back and then sew that part again.
A few inches later.
Alright, another loop. I don't know, this keeps happening to me. Let's fix that. Huh, never mind, it disappeared. It may take you some time to figure out exactly where to put your needle so that all of the buttonhole stitches look even. This is something that I only learned by actually doing more buttonholes. My first buttonholes looked pretty terrible. So now when we're getting to that little round part, that's actually when it gets a little bit harder because it's not just straight anymore. But you just go around like that and keep the distance in mind that you have in between the edge of your buttonhole and the hole of your buttonhole. By the way, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them as comments. I'll be with you.
One eternity later.
So I'm gonna change my thread into a new one. What I'm doing is I just kind of drag the thread back by just going over here once, just into the hole like that. Then I went back. I didn't go over it so that it doesn't pull the fabric together. But then I just started making a couple of little insertions again, just into the fabric at the back. And I'm going to be making some little knots like that to tie off my thread that I'm going to cut off. I made 3 knots in total. There we go. Alright, so I've prepared another needle, complete with a knot, and now we're going to do the same thing as when we started, even though there's already buttonhole sewing around the buttonhole. So what we're going to do is, we're just going to go into the fabric here, just so that the knot sits in between the fabric, pulling it through. And now just continue as usual. Just go into the back of the buttonhole and then go through to the front and just continue as you have been basically the whole time. And then we go into the loop. We go into the loop like this. From below, and then pull upwards so that a knot forms at the very top. And you keep on doing that. I'll see you when the buttonhole is done. So I'm having a slight bit of problem going into this part of the hole, and that is because it's so close to this edge right here. Right there, so that edge. It's hard for me to put the needle through because there's nothing for me to grip onto, so I'm gonna have to do that off camera real quick. It was kind of hard to do this. It was really hard to go over that little part there in the end. I made it work as well as I could. But here, I guess the buttonhole looks a little bit uneven. This part is going to be hardest at the very end, because that is actually where that first little knot is that we made here. And it's going to be the hardest to go through there. My last stitch. Alright, so now we're done with the hole itself. Let's knot it off. So here, and this is where we ended up. Now just put your needle into here. Really good idea to put it through somewhere where there's still a little space, possibly where you couldn't go through before. Let me just do that. Alright, so here we go. Poked it through, pulling it through. And now, on the other side, we're gonna knot it off 3 times just like I showed you before. So pick up a tiny bit of fabric, like so, and then just go through the loop again, creating another knot. 1, 2, and 3. Time to cut the thread off. And we're done with the buttonhole. Oh, you can't believe how happy I am. This honestly was sweat and blood. Almost blood, because I poked myself multiple times into my actual thumb here. This isn't how my buttonholes usually look, but on this project, as it was really far onto the edge, that was my fault, I guess, for not really looking at it or so. They tend to look a lot neater. Here's an example. This one is a lot neater, as you can see. But that is probably also because there wasn't really any problems. Everything was quite spaced out and there were no knots in between. Nice! And you have now finished your pad. So here we have it. These are actually really great to make. First of all, they're really cheap in the long run. You don't need to buy pads at the store, and at the same time you don't need to throw them away either. And this makes them really great for the environment as well. Just like the fact that you actually can recycle your clothes to make pads. I also think it's great that you know exactly what is inside your pads, and if you want, you can choose materials that make them all natural. It's also just a really fun and easy small project. You can add as much color as you want to them, and this just makes them really fun. It's always nice to look at something colorful. Alright guys, so we've finally gotten to the end of the video. I would like to say thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Let me know in the comments, do you use cloth pads? And how many do you have if so? Don't forget to subscribe. Keep your eyes out for more content in the future. And sorry once again for that late video. There was so much editing and it took me so long, and it ended pretty late. Bye for now!